Hello and welcome to the LG Fitness Podcast. I am your host, Lewis Graham, and this is episode number 2. So, thank you to you guys that listened into the podcast last week. I've had some really good feedback, so really appreciate anyone that's listened to it. If you haven't listened to it yet and you want to go check it out, we had a really good topic of what I would do differently if I was to start my health and fitness journey over again. So, if you haven't watched that, go give it a watch. Let me know what your thoughts are. But yeah, like I said, we had some really good feedback. So really appreciate that. And I feel a lot more relaxed coming into this podcast, which is nice. I think a lot of nerves, I suppose, of just doing it for the first time and didn't really know what to expect. But now that I've done it again, and this is probably a lesson that I'll always sort of repeat over and over again is don't wait to do something, just do something, just do it. Because eventually you'll just get better at it anyway. The worst that can happen is you mess up a little bit, but ultimately you learn from making mistakes. So don't worry about it. Whatever it is, if it's going to the gym, if it's going for a walk, if it's whatever it is, just do it. Just get yourself started because then you can start learning from it. Then you can make mistakes and then you can get better as you go along. So yeah, like I said, I think it's probably going to be a recurring theme among all of these podcasts. I'll probably say a lot of the same stuff, but if that stuff needs to be said 50 times for you to understand it and then apply it and then you get results from it, then happy days. Then I'm going to keep talking about it because I think the stuff that I talk about is the stuff of what I believe will help you within your health and fitness journey. Is what I believe that will help you get results. I've seen it with my clients, I've seen it with myself. So hopefully, like I said, everything that I talk about today and in future podcasts, in the previous podcasts, will help you. But yeah, I'm feeling a lot more relaxed with this podcast. I've actually set a timer up to the side of me to make sure that I don't go too long on this one. The first podcast was about 40 minutes long. And if you ask any of my clients, any of my clients that work with me, certainly online, basically every client that I work with, I do a check-in once a week. And these check-ins are essentially to keep up to date with where the client is at. So how are they getting on? What worked well for them this week? What didn't go so well? How their training was, how their nutrition's been, all the different stuff that I need to know as a coach to understand where are they at right now? Where are they going? Are they moving in the right direction? Are they not moving in the right direction? And then essentially what I do is give like a video feedback, a video response based on what is going well, what isn't going so well. And then hopefully it sort of enables me to make adjustments to the plan, pick up different conversations and pick up what's working, what's not working, and be able to change and help keep people moving forward essentially. But basically these check-ins, I can often go off on long tangents where I end up planning to do a check-in for like 10 minutes long, like a 10-minute long video, and then I end up doing 15, 20 minutes accidentally. So it's probably going to be the same with these podcasts. I'm probably just going to chat like I have now for like 3.5 minutes of a load of nothing. But hopefully you enjoy it either way. Hopefully you get a bit of a laugh out of it. Like I said, sometimes I can go off on tangents with these things and I end up going into conversations that I maybe wasn't planning to go into. And yeah, it can often lead me to talk for a lot longer than I need to. So I've got a timer in front of me today. So hopefully, I'm just trying to keep this one short and sharp. Hopefully, but no promises on that one. But yeah, if you enjoy this podcast, like it, share it, drop it a review. I'd really appreciate that. It would really help. If it helps you, then it could potentially help someone else. So if you could share the podcast, that would be amazing. And I really appreciate you. So that leads us into what we're going to talk about today. And that is really nutrition, but not nutrition as a whole, because again, we could be talking for hours on nutrition. We're going to talk specifically about your relationship to nutrition or your relationship with food, one might say. And I think this is a really important topic, especially if you want to get in better shape and especially if you want to feel good, because I believe that most people have a poor relationship with food in general. I think, anyway, I think a lot of people will see foods as good and bad. They think that lower calorie is better. And these are just a few of the points that we're going to touch on today. And I want to help you understand how you can improve your relationship with food and how that's then going to lead into you getting better results, feeling much more happy in general, and feeling less food guilt. I think a lot of people feel guilt around eating certain foods, and I want to try and help you understand that that is not the case, and that's not how you need to feel around food. Food should be enjoyed. Food, there's far more to food essentially than just sort of calories or protein and all that sort of stuff. There's far more to it than that. Food's all about enjoyment, and if we can enjoy eating and if we can enjoy our diet, then it's going to make getting in better shape far more enjoyable. It's going to make it better, getting in better shape. Sorry, it's going to make it easier as well. And I think a lot of the stuff that you probably think about food, again, I think is the world that we live in now. It's the marketing. I spoke about marketing on the last podcast about how supplements and stuff are marketed to fool you into getting them and thinking that you need to get certain things. And I think marketing these days on certain foods would make you believe that certain foods are better than others. And it will potentially distort your view on certain foods and make you think that they're bad and this is good. And again, with social media as well, a lot of people are out here demonizing food, saying that, carbohydrates are bad. If you were to listen to everything that you heard on social media, there's people telling you not to eat fruit because of the sugar. There's people telling you not to eat fats because they make you gain fat. There's people telling you not to eat carbs because they make you gain fat. There's people telling you not to eat protein because protein's not good. If you have too much of it, it's not good for you. I've even seen people talk about water, saying that you shouldn't drink water. So if you listen to everyone online, you'd basically have nothing left that you could possibly eat, and you'd end up starving to death. So hopefully we're going to just try and break this down a little bit and make you understand that it's all right to eat certain foods. It's more about how much of those foods that you're going to eat. And I think a lot of the things, like I said, you see in social media, I think a lot of people just say, oh, lower calories better, lower fat options are better, and things like that. And there's a big assumption that less is better. So you probably know someone, and if you don't know someone, it might be yourself, that thinks the less that you eat, the better it's going to be for weight loss. And ultimately, that is technically true. Like, the less calories that you eat, or the greater the deficit that you can create, will mean that you will lose weight more quickly. However, you're also going to potentially lose muscle mass. You're also potentially going to be a lot more tired. You're definitely going to be way more hungry. And how long you can stick to a large deficit is, well, again, it depends on the individual, but realistically, you're not going to be able to stick to that for a very long time. Like I said, you're going to be tired, you're going to be hungry, you're going to have a lot of food thoughts, which is going to make it much harder to stick to that deficit. And ultimately, you're going to feel very, very restricted. Whereas if you go for like a smaller, more moderate deficit, then you can actually lose weight sustainably. You can include the foods that you like. You can feel energized. You can get good results in the gym. You can increase your performance. You can not lose muscle mass. And ultimately, that's always going to be the better approach. But I think a lot of people have this mindset of, well, less is better because I need to get to my result as quickly as possible. But although you might lose weight quickly in the short term, long term, you're more likely to put that weight back on. So it's something to really consider. When I set people their calories, first of all, a lot of people will say, oh, that calorie target's too high. And this is down to the fact that a lot of people, when they do diet, is they will over restrict. They will be overly restrictive, and they'll stick to like a super low calorie target. You hear like the 1200 calorie diets. And that's just too low for the vast majority of people. That's too low. And what you'll find is, like I said, you might stick to it for a week or two, and you'll see some really good results, because you'll see the scale will drop really quickly. And you will think, oh my God, this is working really well. And all of a sudden, you have a weekend away, or you have a few days where you go off track, and then you start eating those foods that you've cut out. And all of a sudden that weight goes back on, and you think, oh, well, I can't eat these foods that I've just eaten because I've just gained all this weight. And realistically, all you've done is just create a massive deficit, been super restrictive. So you've lost loads of weight, and then you've not been able to stick to it. And then you've had like a little bit of a mini binge or something like that, where you've eaten loads and loads of calories. And then, surprise, surprise, your weight goes back up. And now all of a sudden, you have this relationship with dieting and relationship with food that you think lower calories is better because you've lost all this weight in the past. You've lost all this weight in the past from going really low diet. So you think, well, I need to do that again. I just need to have more willpower to stick to it. I need to be more disciplined in order to stick to that. And realistically, it's just the diet is not set up in a way for you to stick to it. It's not set up for you. It's not set up for your likes, your dislikes. It's not set up in a way that's actually sustainable for you to lose weight and keep it off. Because that is the key thing, is being able to keep the weight off after you've lost it. I know many, many people that have lost weight. I know far less people that have maintained that weight once they've lost it. So what I'm sort of talking about here is this perception of food of being good or bad. And if there's one thing that you can take away from this podcast today, is understand that there is no such thing as good or bad food. I'll say that again. There's no such thing as a good food. There is no such thing as a bad food, because it is all in the dosage, right? Too much of anything is going to be a bad thing. Too little of anything is going to be a bad thing. It's in the too much, right? Too much water. Too much water is not good for you. But understand that drinking water is obviously good for you. But again, too much of anything is going to be a bad thing. So we can't isolate particular foods and say that's good, that's bad. It's all in the context. The context is really the key. So, for example, for someone that's trying to gain weight, perhaps they've had histories of eating disorders, perhaps they are got a history of anorexia or something like that, right? And we're trying to encourage this person to eat a little bit more. We probably want them to have maybe more calorie dense foods, right? They probably eat lots of salads. They probably eat lots of quote unquote good foods, the stuff that we would consider healthy and good for us, right? But ultimately, they're eating really, really low calorie or not eating at all, which is again another topic for another day. But ultimately, we want that person to gain weight. So certain foods that are going to be a bit more calorie dense is probably going to be a good food for them to be eating. And likewise, if someone is trying to drop body fat, then the higher nutrient dense foods are obviously going to be foods that we want to consume a lot more of. And in general, for most people, we want to be consuming nutrient dense foods 80% of the time. You've probably heard of like this 80-20 rule, where you go 80% of your diet wants to be made up of nutrient dense quality foods, and then 20% of your diet wants to be made up of, those more enjoyable foods. And I think in general, we sort of know what types of foods that we should be eating more of, what types of food that we should be eating less of. So, the chocolate, the crisps, the sweets, the donuts, all those types of things. We know that we should probably reduce the intake of how much we're eating those. And we know that we should probably eat more of, fruit, vegetables, lean meats, pastas, rices, those types of foods. Is we want to have that as the majority of our diet. And then, like I said, we can make up the rest of our diet with the more fun foods, if you want to call them that. But I think a lot of people have this notion of good and bad, because when they diet, they have this, okay, well, I'm being good, so therefore I will only eat salads, proteins, those types of things because I'm being good. And they'll completely cut out the other side of the diet, and they'll label those foods as bad. Now, the issue with labeling foods as good and bad is that it's all well and good when you're eating the quote unquote good foods, when you're eating that and when you're in that routine. All of a sudden, then when you have something that you consider to be bad, then that is a potential to lead to binge eating, because, oh no, I've had something bad, therefore I've messed up my diet, therefore I go, oh well, fuck it, I'm just going to eat loads of bad stuff because I've been cutting it out completely. If you cut something out of your diet, the cravings for that thing is going to go up. So when you have it, you're like, oh, well, I haven't had it. So I'm just going to have loads of it now. And then I'm going to start my diet on Monday. And then I'm going to cut all of this out again. So you might have something on a Friday. And then you go, oh, no, I've ruined my diet. Okay, well, Saturday, Sunday, fuck it. I'm just going to eat what I want. I'm just going to eat everything that I possibly can. And you go into this massive binge of chocolate, crisps, sweets, ice cream, all that sort of stuff that you've been cutting out, and you know that on Monday you're going to start your diet again. So you know that all these foods are going to be cut out of your diet again. So what do? You eat as much of it as you can before Monday, because you know Monday comes around, there's no more of that. So this cycle can then continue to happen, and it perpetuates this all or nothing mindset where you have to be all in with your training, all in with your nutrition, or just not bothering at all. And what you need to understand is how to include those foods within your diet so that you can actually, like I said, maintain it, sustain it long term. So then when you do maybe go over your calories a little bit, then you just go, okay, cool, I'm just going to get back on it the next day. And that's really the key, is how can we include, chocolate crisps, whatever it is that you enjoy eating. For some people, again, like I'm not a particularly big fan of like crisps and stuff like that. That doesn't really do it for me. What I do love is chocolate. Like I love chocolate. So how can I include chocolate within my diet so that I'm not craving it? So that when I do have chocolate, I'm not tempted to go, oh, fuck it, and eat the whole bar. So for me, on a personal level, I normally have like Cocoa Pops. I normally have them maybe 4 times a week, something like that. And I'll have like some like a bit of dark chocolate with it. Maybe sometimes I can sometimes have that every day if I wanted to, but I normally have it maybe 4 or 5 times a week. And what that allows me to do is have that little bit of a balance where I've got a little bit of chocolate within diet, not completely cutting it out, and I'm enjoying it, so that when, if I'm encounter, I don't know, like a party or something like that, and there's chocolate there, I'm not like, oh, I must eat all of it, because I've satisfied that craving throughout the day, throughout the week. So that's really the key, is whatever you really, really enjoy, how can you include that within your diet? Because as soon as you cut it out, you're only going to think about it more. You're only going to get more and more cravings. You're only going to want it more and more. And then when you do have it, you're probably likely to overeat on it, which then would potentially lead you to gaining weight, sorry. And then it feeds into this cycle of thinking, well, I can't have that food because it's bad, and I must eat these foods because they're good. All right. So it's really important to understand that you can include whatever it is within your diet. Some foods are going to fill you up more for less calories. Essentially, there's foods that are higher in nutrients, higher in protein. They've got more vitamins, minerals, all that sort of stuff. There's foods like that that are potentially going to be able to fill you up for less calories, and there's foods that are going to be quite calorie dense that are not going to fill you up. So if you were to eat 1,000 calories worth of chocolate, you would maybe be full for an hour tops, maybe. You could eat 1,000 calories of chocolate quite comfortably. If you were to have 1,000 calories of chicken breast, well, I'd challenge you to actually finish it in one sitting without feeling really full. And that's really what you need to understand, is that, okay, there are some foods that are going to fill me up for less calories. They're going to make me feel good. And there are other foods that potentially, yeah, they taste better, don't get me wrong, but they're probably not going to fill me up. And that's what you need to understand when you're looking at food, is, okay, this is more nutritious. This is maybe a little bit less nutritious. This is something that I want to have more often than not. This is something that I maybe have on the occasion. So rather than looking at them as good and bad. It's looking at them in a different light, because once you start to understand that, and once you start to see food differently rather than looking at food good and bad, you'll improve your relationship with food. You'll be able to include the foods that you enjoy, and you'll also start to make better choices around food on a consistent basis, which is only just going to make it far easier for you to get in shape and for you to drop body fat. And understand that I'm wary as well. I'm wary as well because I'm 20 minutes in. So I think we're not going too long. So I'm going to make this final point on food. And like I said at the start, about a lot of you have this mindset of like, okay, well, less is more, because I need to lose weight. I need to therefore eat a lot less. And it's true in the fact that you need to create a calorie deficit. And like I touched on before, if you want to lose weight and keep it off, you need to be able to not create a massive deficit that you feel sluggish all the time, you feel tired all the time, you feel hungry all the time. What you need to understand is that if you want to get the best possible results, if you want to build muscle in the gym, if you want to perform well in the gym, if you want to perform well at work, if you want to be able to run faster, whatever your goal is in terms of your training. So we spoke about training a little bit on the last podcast, but when it comes to your training, if you want to perform your absolute best, then you need to be able to fuel your body in the best way. And that doesn't even have to be training. That could be, like I said, at work. It could be just at home with your family. How can you perform your best for your family? Well, you're going to need some sort of fuel to be able to do that. So if you're not eating enough food, then you're not going to be fueling your body correctly, and you're going to not perform at the best you possibly can. Like I said a minute ago, when I set calorie targets for people, a lot of the time, a lot of people think, oh, well, that's too much. I don't normally eat that much. If you're not losing weight consistently, if you're not consistently losing weight, if you've been struggling, if you've been up and down for a long time, on average, you have been consuming your maintenance calories. Now, when I do a calorie calculator for people, I'll normally set their calories depending on their goal. If it is fat loss, I'll set it a little bit below what I would think is their maintenance calories. If, by the way, you're struggling, you're not sure how many calories you need to eat for fat loss or maintenance or muscle growth, drop me a message and I'll be happy to help you out with that. But yeah, what I do normally is work out their maintenance, and then I take a couple of hundred off that. And then still people will say, well, that's too high. I can't lose weight on that. The reason why you think you can't lose weight on that is because, like I said before, you've only followed really low calorie diets in the past. So you think that you're following that diet. But what you fail to understand is that over the weekend, when you have your binge, you can consume double, triple, four times the amount of calories that you're currently on. So your average calories that you're consuming is maintenance, probably higher than the calorie target that I have set you. All right. And I get a lot of people question me all the time about, oh, well, I did a calorie calculator. It says I need to eat this much in order to lose weight, but I've been eating less than that and I'm not losing weight. You're not eating less than that. You're just not aware of how much you're eating. Things can add up very, very quickly. And like I said, you can go through this stage where you do eat really low calorie for a week, 2 weeks, maybe 3, 4 weeks. Eventually, you're going to eat all of those calories back, and your average over time is going to be much, much higher. So understand that when you set a calorie target, it is a little bit higher. It's higher for a reason, because food is there to be enjoyed. It's far more than just calories. It's far more than just protein, carbs, fats. It's way more than that. Think of all of the social occasions that you've ever been to in your life. How many of them revolve around food? I'd say 90% of social occasions revolve around food, whether it's going out for a meal, even at weddings, there's food. Everything that we do socially tends to revolve around food or drink. So understand that having a slightly higher calorie target will allow you to actually go out for meals, will allow you to actually enjoy the foods that you love, and help you feel fueled so that your performance is good within the gym, like I said, at work, at home, whatever that may be. Now, the key with this is, like I said, 80% mostly nutrient dense foods. Like I said, lean proteins, meat, fish, good quality carbohydrate sources, oats, pasta, rice, potatoes, those types of things, fruits, vegetables, nuts, um, that type of stuff, right? Is good quality food 80% of the time. Then can we have that more enjoyable element, if you like, of, your donuts, your crisps, your chocolate, that type of thing? Can we include that on the occasion? Because if you can do that, like I said, you'll improve your relationship with food. You will make it far, far easier to stick to your diet, which will mean you're far more consistent. Sorry, and the more consistent you are, the better the results you will have. Sorry. So yeah, I hope that makes sense. I am going to go into a couple of questions. I want to try and, like I said, keep this relatively short. I don't want to go on too long for these questions, so I'm just going to find my questions in a moment. Bear with me 2 seconds. So here are, we're gonna do maybe one or two, because like I said, I don't want to keep this going for too long. So when it comes to pre-workout, what would you suggest, or what would you recommend? Would you recommend a pre-workout? Would you recommend coffee, sweets, or nothing? That's a good question, and I think again it depends on what works for you, right? Personally, when it comes to pre-workouts, and I mentioned this on like supplements and stuff like that, personally, like pre-workouts for me, I just don't really enjoy them. I find that I get really itchy. Yes, they obviously sort of increase that alertness and gives you like that energy boost, if you like. I personally don't like them, and I'd rather not waste my money on supplements like that. I personally just like a coffee. So the closer you get towards training, and again, it depends on the type of training you're doing. The closer you get towards training, you probably want to have like more of a liquid based meal pre-hand. So like I said, you could have a coffee, you could look at like an electrolyte drink, like a Lucozade or something like that. Something like that is going to be beneficial if you're quite close to training, if you're sort of within 20-30 minutes of training. If you've got an hour or two beforehand, then again, like some oats, some good quality carbohydrates are going to be key. Again, depending on the exercise you're doing, but generally you're going to want some sort of carbohydrate source, maybe some protein in there as well. And that's going to be obviously beneficial. Remember that we get energy from the food that we eat. So if you can have a decent meal an hour or two before you train, then that's going to be beneficial. If not, like I said, a coffee can be helpful, banana, or you could look at potentially like electrolyte drinks, Lucozade, that sort of stuff. That can be really helpful to help with like a bit of a boost for training. What is the best time of day to train? Good question. And again, it just depends on the person. It depends on what you enjoy, and it depends on your lifestyle, what your routine looks like, and where you can fit it in, essentially. For example, if you start work at 7 in the morning, is it realistic for you to get up really early and go before work? It might be. And if that works for you, then great. If it means that you're going to end up sleeping 5 hours just so that you can get up at 5 in the morning and then get a training session in, then I'd probably say you'd probably want to wait a little bit later in the day if you can, just so that you can prioritize sleep. But again, it really depends on the person. For me personally, I'm privileged enough. I have clients that I see in the morning, and I'm able to train midday. Now, obviously, if you're working throughout the day, you may not have the luxury of being able to go to the gym sort of mid-morning or anything like that. I personally like to train around midday. That's when works best for me. But again, there are some days when work is a little bit busier, or I've got other stuff that is going on, and sometimes I have to train first thing in the morning, sometimes I have to train in the evening. The main thing that you want to do is just look at your schedule and then book in some time where you can train. That's the key. A lot of people go wrong by leaving training to chance and just trying to fit it in wherever they can, wherever their schedule can allow them to. But this is probably the biggest mistake with that, is because if it's not planned in, you probably just won't do it. So look at your diary, look at your week as a whole, and however many times you're looking to train a week, whether that's 2, 3, 4 times, whatever it is, look at your schedule, look at where is going to be best for you to get those training sessions in. Make sure you schedule them in your diary, because then they will happen. They're far more likely to happen than if you just try and leave it to chance. So, best time to train, like I said, it depends on the person. Obviously, some people find later in the evening or later in the day a little bit better after work because they have more energy because they've eaten throughout the day. Some people, on the other hand, feel like they feel very tired from work, so they prefer to get it done in the morning. So then they feel energized for the day. Like I said, it's totally down to the individual. Yeah, that's all I have to say on it, really. But yeah, I hope that makes sense. I'm not going to answer any more questions. I have got a few more questions, but I'm going to save them for another podcast because, like I said, I don't want to run on for too long. As I said to you guys at the start, thank you very much for listening to the first episode. Thank you for listening to this episode. If you do have any questions, send them through to my Instagram at Lewis Graham Coaching. Any other questions that you have, please feel free to get in touch. Drop me an email if you want, lewis@lewisgrahamfitness.co.uk, and I will see you in the next one. Take care.